we obviously put it in the announcement. Was thinking of just going through a couple of ASINs, doing a bit of a live lead analysis, just run through some of the basics of how I tend to go about it. Won't cover absolutely everything, but we'll do a sort of a quick summary of what I would typically do. Certainly in the first instance, so very quickly you can look at a lead and kind of rule it out, very quickly, or look at it and think it might actually have something, so you then spend a little bit more time on it. So we'll run through a couple of things and see if anybody can pick anything up that they didn't already know, and likewise if you've got any good hints or tips or things that you like to do that maybe I don't mention, again, feel free. Let's all work together and we can all maybe learn a thing or two. I don't profess myself to be an expert by any means. I'm 2 years in now, about a year to 18 months on an OA. Prior to that was all RA. So I've been doing it a while now. Long enough, I think, that I've learnt a thing or two, should we say. Did anybody have an ASIN in mind that they would like me to look at before I go into some that I've sort of pre-prepared to run through? Don't forget you can use the text chat that's in this live session. If you don't want to speak out, just type in there. I'll keep my eye on that. I'll try and answer any questions as we go as well.
I was just going to ask you, is it possible we can go through any A to A leads?
Yeah, we can do. Was there one in particular? Have you seen one where you've wondered whether it was right to go for it or not? Where have you got an ASIN in mind?
Not really. Like, obviously, I've seen the leads and I've seen there's a lot of posts of A to A leads, but I'm not entirely sure, like, if it's any good, to be honest. So I don't really know, because mainly I've been focusing on the online arbitrage side, but I want to get into the A to A as well.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I do A to A as well myself. Not as much these days. It hasn't been quite as good as it has been in the past lately. God knows why. There's just not been as many things coming up, I don't think. It seems to have gone through a bit of a dry spell for some reason, but I mean, if it's a little tricky for me to jump through to the other channels and start searching through. Obviously, it'll make it a bit quiet in here for the others who have turned up. So if you want to have a quick look yourself and post one in the chat, we'll see how we get on. Once I've gone through a few, maybe I'll be able to jump out for a sec, go and have a look for one and come back in. But generally, it's the same principle that you follow for any lead, regardless of the source. The thing with A2As is more about speed. So what you tend to do is buy it and then analyze it to make sure that you get it. You can always cancel the order. I think you've got like a 15-minute window or something like that to cancel, no questions asked. So particularly if it's one that's in the staff picks channel, that's usually one where one of the members of staff has gone through. They're probably buying it themselves, so they've pinged it. So that's sort of being vetted a little bit more than just the pings that go in the regular A2A channels. They're sort of unapproved, if you like. They're ready for analysis. But yeah, as I say, we'll go through a couple, and if anybody can find one in the meantime and wants to post it in the chat for me to look at shortly, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, I've got one, but where do I post it?
So you should find, it depends, are you on mobile or desktop? You should find a little chat icon somewhere that will open a text window, and you can see some discussion happening there. A couple of ASINs being posted already for me to have a look at. And then if you just paste it in there.
So I think what I'm looking at is the custom A to A, and I think you posted a Remington hairdryer and a Remington hair straightener.
Okay. Recently?
It was, I think about, actually, wait, hold on.
I'm just wondering, I'm just going to have a quick look on my phone, because I don't think it'll
I think it was about last night. on the custom A to A section.
Yeah, got that one there now. Remington Prolux Midnight Hairdryer. That sound like the one?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, about midnight. Okay. Well, I'll keep that on my screen here, and we'll have a look at that one shortly as well. A1, those ASINs that you just put in the chat, stick me a cost of good down for them as well. Obviously, it's a little bit more difficult to make a judgment call on something without that. So if you can lay your hands on them, post them in as well. Okay, well, as I say, I've put a few together. Some good, some bad. We'll have a quick look through them. I'll go through the basics of what I tend to do, and then whether I would consider it a good lead or not for whatever reason. Obviously, we'll all have slightly different criteria in what we consider good and bad in terms of things like the ROI, the sales per month minimums that you aim for. So what I might say is okay or not okay. You might consider it okay, depending on your own criteria. But as I say, we'll have a flick through. If anybody's got any questions at any point, or they want me to go back and touch on something, just shout up. So these leads that I'm going to run through are ones that one of my VAs posted this month so far. I just picked four or five of them at random. So you might see in the lookup details that I've already looked at them in the past recently. So this one was on the 9th of March, a couple of days ago. Was a lead from the range, not a particularly common one, but obviously you've got the RA option and click and collect options with it. So even if you are full-time OA and not interested in RA, it's an option for you. Likewise, if you're RA, you can go in store and probably get them straight off the shelf. I think the range does have stock checkers on their website, so you can make sure they've got something in beforehand. But yeah, it's an okay store. It's pretty readily and easily accessible. So you're looking for typically higher sales per month or ones with nice low seller counts and a good history of a low seller count to make sure that you've got some safety in there from the high influx. But so generally speaking, your first window, your quick info, drop your cost of goods in, tend to look at the current buy box as the initial price for sales. And as you see here, everything here is green, which is a good start. So for those newer to doing this, you can go into SAS. You can change all these settings to mins, maxes, whichever way around it is. So that, for example, I might have minimum profit set to £1, for example. So as soon as the profit, once I punch those two numbers in, if anything's less than £1, that'll come up red, and straight away I'll know I'm not interested, unless I can get that cost of good down again. Same principle for all the others as well. We've got no alerts on it, so no obvious signs of IPs or anything like that. No historic IP has been reported to SAS, so it's off to a good start. I'd move down to ranks and prices next. Start to look at the history where the buy box has been. So over the last 30 days, the average has been nearly 50p lower there, so nearer to £13, has dropped as low as 12. But as we hop up to the graphs here, you can see it does fluctuate a fair bit. Let's pop this to the last 30 days. It's been pretty steady now for a week and a half at this kind of price, but did dip before then, here and there, up and down a little bit. Usually when you see the ups and downs in that buy box price, you usually see a sort of corresponding tail down here in the offer count graph. So the purple line here, as you can see, their offer count, as that drops up and down, you tend to see that the pattern of that how that's moving tends to match similarly up here, which it's actually a pretty good example of that, to be fair. It's pretty consistent in matching up. But with the sale price fluctuating a little bit, the monthly sold stayed solid at 50 a month, so that's looking okay so far. I'd then jump into 90 days. We can see there that the average was higher. Switch the graphs to match and see the same things again. The seller count rising, the sale price dropping. not too bad to be fair, but common sight when you're looking at the graphs. Seller count goes up, buy box price tends to come down as the competition increases. So not too drastic on this one. It stayed pretty consistent, and it looks like it was pretty solid before then. If we drag it over a bit earlier, so we're going back last year now, Q4 time. Doesn't look like it goes back any further than that, but started life good at 16.99. So you never know, could head back up to those numbers, but I think realistically, looking at these averages so far, we're looking at around 13.5 to maybe 15 if you're lucky. One of the things I would do is jump through to the Amazon page just to see if it tells you anything different. So here we've got 50 plus bought in the last month, so consistent with what it said on SAS, so that's a good start. The data is aligning. Sometimes you see this not here on the listing page, but SAS will say it's got that many sales a month. Sometimes you'll see this higher than SAS says, so sometimes you might look at it and decide to take an average. We'll move on to, I'll throw it into Keeper in a minute as well, just to show you how I might look at it quickly in there as well, just to try and get a sort of third view on those sales per month. Generally speaking, everything's green. We've got no warnings. It's not dangerous goods. Amazon never on the listing. Jump over to the buy box analysis over this side, and looks like this character has had quite a big slice of that pie. 73% over the last 90 days. Now, when we hop back over to the graph, this is the last 90 days. 3, 4, 5 sellers, generally speaking. So odds are, for a lot of this period when it was down to 3, that'll be when this seller probably had the buy box for so long. Yeah, the FBM price was higher quite often there, so that would explain that. So it's not necessarily an alarm bell that they've had such a big cut of the share. It could just be lack of competition, or lack of competitive pricing against them. Their price is okay right now, so I think there's no red flags there in my opinion. What I tend to do once I've had a run through that, before I decide to pull the trigger and look at making a purchase, I'll stick it in Keeper. You watch, Keeper won't work for me now. Let's try it in here, try and reload it. There we go. So we get a lot of the same data in terms of graphs and things that SAS has. A lot of the stuff you should find, it's almost identical. You see the pattern there on that buy box line, comparable to what we've just seen over in SAS. So I tend to move over to the data tab, have a look at offers, and we can look at some of the recent history on it and see if the sales per month matches up with what SAS is saying. So I tend to select FBA only, if it'll let me, and include historical offers. Now that one's useful because that's going to include sellers who are no longer on the listing. So people who may have sold out in the last 30 days. We're not interested in used, so I tend to whip that one off just in case. But FBA only and historical offers. And what I'm particularly interested in is this column. Sold in the last 30 days. This column might not be here when you look at your version of Keeper. They're all in very different order. There's lots of different columns. I've just crunched it down to the ones that I'm interested in the most. So, but what we're keen on is this total 125 in the last 30 days. So there's that yes I want it seller that had all the buy box share, and they've sold a nice quantity there at 70. But we can also look at the stock history, and what we're interested in is any of these sort of steep drops. So why would this seller with 68 stock drop to 11, 12, 13? same day, next day, that's a really quick steep drop. So that's a little bit of a red flag that would suggest that maybe his inventory had a problem. Maybe it went stranded. Maybe he got an IP claim. The IP claim probably isn't the case, because it would be more likely zero there. But those sharp, steep drops in his stock count is a similar red flag to the sell account graph on SAS with the IP warning. So that would indicate that something happened there. Now, most of it did come back by the looks of it, and you're going to get some anomalies in the data as well, but generally speaking, we'll look at one of the others here. Pretty consistent, up, down, gets a few more stock, and it's dropped off nicely there. And then lower sales, it gets a bit harder to then judge that graph count. But generally, that's a pretty good lead in my opinion. I wouldn't be going to town and buying 100 of them, but I'd certainly click and collect on a few of them. I think my local store had 5. I've got to go and pick them up still from a couple of days ago, but that lead to me was okay. Pretty safe bet. Pretty good numbers. 60% ROI. Not ideal on the profit. We like to see bigger numbers these days, but as I say, I've got that set to about a pound. What this is also factoring in that won't be for everybody else. If you're trying to compare at the same time, just to see, I'm VAT registered, so if you're not, that'll be having an impact. And I've also got prep fee added in, which SAS then just applies to every ASIN as I'm reviewing it to make sure it's factored in these numbers. So if you're not VAT registered and you don't use a prep centre, these numbers would all be better, and I would be tempted perhaps to go and get a few more than what I have. I'll just have a quick look back over the questions before I move on, just in case there's anything here specific to this one. Loopy Lou, with sales per month on SAS, if it doesn't mirror that on Amazon page for the product, do you feel that SAS is more reliable than that on the Amazon product page? I've seen some differences of late whereby they don't match up, or Amazon don't even have the sales per month on the Amazon page. My understanding with SAS is that it's based on stock drops. So same principle as Keeper, albeit I think Keeper has access to a lot more data, but generally speaking, SAS will recognise the stock counts of a seller. They'll wait for it to drop. When it drops, it counts as the sale naturally. Now, where that becomes a little bit difficult to not trust, but it's not 100%, as with most of these things. It's analysis, and you combine all of these elements together to decide whether a lead is good, and a lot of that can come with experience. The longer you do this for, the more you tend to pick up on these things and get a feel for what you're happy with, what leaves you feeling uncomfortable and makes you move on to something else. But generally, my concern these days, and it's something I do to be fair, just to avoid pricing competition. If I've got high stock in something, so if I've got 100 units in something, which I've got a few ASINs where that's the case, the Inkies being a prime example from Home Bargains a month or so ago, whilst I've got 100 units, if you were to find my store on here, not that I'm giving you that, but you would see that it'll say 4. Because I put the order quantity limit, I set that when I add the ASIN to my inventory that nobody can order more than 4. So once I send that stock in, even though I've got 100 in stock, it will only show on SAS as 4. And I'm going to make 96 sales before SAS will recognise a stock drop, because it'll be that 97th sale that takes me from 4 down to 3 and so on. That's when it'll recognise the sales. So sales per month can actually be much higher than what SAS is recording. Now, I believe Keeper can delve a little bit further and does recognise that, but I'm not entirely sure. I don't use Keeper in great detail, to be honest. I'm very limited on time when it comes to analysis and stuff. I don't do any sourcing myself. I only review VA leads because that's all I've got time for these days. But it's the combination of the three is how I tend to do it. I'll look at SAS, I'll look at the sales per month. You're looking at the green line in the top graph here. Consistent, one a day, almost two a day, that kind of thing, of drops. So that's pretty consistent. I believe the gold line on this middle graph is pulled from the Amazon listing page anyway. So where it's saying 50 plus a month now, that's exactly what we saw on the listing page for Amazon. It said 50 plus. So it may save you the time of flicking to that page to double check, but for what it is, I like to have a quick look. That's one of the main things I do. So once the lead comes through to me, I will look at the source. So I will open that link up. What I always tend to do as well, so that you can see whether you've looked at it in the past and where and why you looked at it and what the cost was, what sale price you were aiming for, is put it in the lookup details here, especially if it's an OA lead. If you've got a URL for it, save it in, and it'll save the cost details as well for you. So should you come across it again in a week or two's time, maybe it's a different price, you can also then see, well, what's happened since you last looked at it? Were you right to buy it? Were you wrong to buy it? And you can sort of educate yourself on the go with that as well. But as I say, first thing I'll do is I'll check out the source. I'll look at the product, look at the descriptions, look for an EAN, whatever you want to call it, and start to make the comparison between the source and the listing page. So I would typically open Amazon up. I'm looking for the packaging being a key one. We can see that there pretty clear. String lights, 7 of your favourite Squishmallows. Everything's freezing on me. 7 of your favourite Squishmallows. You can see the images. Go straight back. 7 of your favourite Squishmallows. It's looking good. It's a good match in my opinion. This is usually where you can catch the anomalies by making the comparisons. This is something that I would do early doors, especially if when I'm first looking at this data, if I think it's looking good, before I go spending time going through all sorts of other bits like we've gone through, I'll just do a quick double check and make sure I'm not wasting my time. Is the product definitely a match, so that I don't waste my time, get to the end, ready to buy, and then go, oh, right, that doesn't match because of whatever reason. There's nothing more frustrating when you've got time constraints. You don't want to be wasting your time. At the end of the day, this is all about efficiency, especially for those of us who are doing it as a side hustle and got very limited time. So, I will make a comparison of the three. SaaS, what does the listing page show, and what does Keeper say? So we've got a bit of a variation really, because we've got SaaS saying 50 plus, Amazon saying 50 plus, and Keeper recognising 125. But that difference is, say, 60 or 70. Well, this seller here goes from 70 down to 13. So there's 60, give or take a few. There's your difference in that last 30 days, perhaps. That could literally be what's being recognised as a sale, such a big stock drop. So that would take this total 125 back down to 50, 60, 70, which is then back in keeping with SaaS and Amazon saying around 50 plus sales a month. So I'd say that's pretty consistent in the end. How do you get SaaS to show you the summary of minimum, maximum, average when you hover over it? Let's have a flick back. Don't think it does it on mobile, but I'm literally just hovering over with the cursor. Pops up saying...
No. Sorry, yeah, that was me that asked the question. It was, when you was hovering over the buy box.
Oh, yeah.
Buy box price.
Over this side, yeah.
40. No. Buy box price in ranks and prices, sort of thing. Yeah. How did you get that? No, I don't have that on my SaaS.
I don't think it's a setting I've ever changed, if I'm quite honest. Let me go and have a quick look. Usually, if you can change it, it's going to be in here. So it would just be a case of flicking through to see if it's in anywhere. So there's that prep fee I spoke about before. Minimum 20% ROI, minimum profit £1, minimum BSR 2%. So it's got to be in the top 2%, otherwise it'll warn me. But no, there isn't anything obvious there in terms of why that would or wouldn't show. So no, you've got me there. I'll be honest with you. I'm not entirely sure.
Right.
Unfortunately, what I will do is I will have a look into it though afterwards. If you open a ticket later on, when we're finished on here, I'll have a run through and I'll see if I can figure it out anywhere. But yeah, I didn't know, or I don't recall it being a setting.
Right.
See, it's not loading there now.
All right. Yeah, that's weird.
No, I'll tell you what it is. When you're on current, it won't
Yeah.
show anything because there's no
Okay.
data. That's what it is now, sorry. So when you switch into 30 or 90 days and then you hover over, now it's going to show you it. So you've got your average, which is what initially is what it's showing you, but then it's also giving you the minimum and maximums as well. So that's what it is.
Got you.
There you go.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Solved. Lovely. Which is the most reliable SPM? I think we just touched on that there, didn't we? Do you tend to look at SAS or Keeper for graph data? Both, to be honest. I rely more on SAS. I prefer the speed of it. I would only start to use Keeper in more detail if I was perhaps looking at a wholesale order or typically a large quantity order, because I'd want to be a lot more thorough in my assessment. Generally speaking, if you're buying 5, 10, 15 units of something, even if I was to get it wrong, it's not a disaster. So I don't tend to spend hours analysing the nitty-gritties of every lead. I'll look at the basics like we've just touched on in this first one. And with no red flags coming up during that initial review, obviously I've been chatting and stuff whilst doing it. I would have been much quicker had I not been on this session with you guys. I would have had that done in 2, 3, 4 minutes and bought it and moved on. But yeah, I only tend to use Keeper for detail or to try and identify or confirm a red flag when I'm doing an analysis. I think one of the others that I'll go through might have something that would be relevant to that. How far do I look back on the graph data? I do 30 and 90 in the ranks and prices history, looking at the averages to see where that was at. I tend to do month, 3 month and a full year. Now when I get to a full year on the graph, it won't change here because the listing hasn't been around long enough, but I tend to use the full year one just to look for the IP drops primarily, and then I'll look for really sudden or really big changes in the buy box price. It's not the best example here because it's not the oldest lead, but yeah, a year tends to only be looking for those big changes that haven't been sort of picked up in the last 3 months. Sometimes you can catch some howlers in the history that can put you off. How many units would I decide to buy for this ASIN? Well, as I say, it depends on the source, generally speaking. So with this one being at the range, there's potential for the in-store click and collect, which is what I did to avoid the shipping fee. I've got one not too far from me, but as you can see there now, free click and collect, but it's out of stock in Warrington, and that's where I am because I've bought them and they're sat waiting for me to pick up. Now, it said it had 6 in stock. Turns out there's only 5. They've refunded one. So in this case, I'm only getting 5, but I'm out and about tomorrow. I will be passing nearby, so it's easy enough for me to run in and pick them up. If I wasn't, I probably wouldn't be going out my way for them, because what I like to do here is when I know how many I'm going to be getting, I have a look at the profit calculator and I stick the quantity in here. And I just look at this summary quickly. Total cost, so I'm going to be spending £22.45. It's nearly 70 quid in sales, but total profit's £10.65. So is it worth going out of my way for? Generally on its own, normally I would consider passing on it, but because I am already passing the store, I would thought, you know what, yeah, we'll just go and pick them up. They're just a nice inventory addition, box filler, spreading the ASINs, spreading the capital. They sell well, there's not a lot of competition. 5 is fine for me. If they had 15 or 20, would I have bought them all? Yeah, you know what, I probably would have. I think the history so far has been stable. Capital tie-up wouldn't be too bad. Let's say it was 15. 67 quid. You know, it's 50-60% ROI, so it's hard to turn your nose up at those kind of figures. And even if some competition comes in, because it's a pretty easy source, I just sit on it, hold it, set the repricer to compete down to a point, and then don't go any further, wait for it to recover and reap the rewards later. Just joined, have I missed much? Well, you've missed the first ASIN that I've gone through. Probably the one I'll go through in the most detail, unfortunately, RL. But we'll move on to the next one now, because as I say, that's half an hour on one ASIN there. But I've covered most of the aspects that I would initially run through when reviewing something. So let's have a look at this next one. We're crying for some A2A reviews, no problem. Whilst you've got some ASINs, let's have a look at yours. I'll go back through them, but let's have a look at this one first from RL. Buy price £2, sell price $14.99. So red flags straight away. Eligible? No, that doesn't sound right, because I'm ungated in this, so it'd be interesting to see what the issue is with that. It's a new ASIN. It's only been around since mid to late Jan by the looks of the history there. Unknown fees, that's your first red flag. So this one, it's probably been branded wrong. It's probably restricted, so this AK13 traders is probably the only one who's been on it, and is probably the only one who can get on it. They'll have set up a bad listing. Well, good for them, but bad, naughty, and against the rules, but you're going to come across some of those. It would have been fantastic if it wasn't for that, but the unknown fees element is making it look a lot better than it actually is. So, the size of these and the weight of these, your fees are going to be £5-6 quid. So straight away, that £8 going down to £2. Okay, still 100% ROI. The sales per month is looking good, but with FBM, it's less reliable on tracking that drop in sales, because their stock quantities can fluctuate differently to ours as FBA sellers. The private label warning, obviously it's not private label in the sense that it's L'Oreal, but it's been branded badly. So if we have a little look through, can we see anything that would suggest why that is? I mean, it does say relatively officially there, the L'Oreal Paris store. We've got the right branding down here. Nothing obvious jumping out, so be interesting to see. Hopefully I don't reveal anything too much, but let's have a look, see what brand it says. We are not accepting applications to sell. There you go. So for whatever reason, this seller has managed to get this locked, so we can't even apply. So he's on it on his own. Yeah, no good. Unfortunately, we can't do anything with that. Let me have a look at one of these A2As. You'll have to bear with me because I can't copy the ASIN from here to there. So why did it do that? C143 SNT. 159.99. It's still available now. Computer's lagging a bit here, bear with me. So it's often up there. Amazon have it very highly priced. I mean, I'm always nervous with the toothbrushes when it comes to Amazon, because you often see graph data like this where Amazon seem to peak the price up and then drop it right down and be able to say it's heavily discounted when it's a little bit sort of disingenuous, really. And what you'd probably find is that if you shopped around, if we flick that one through to Google, it'd be interesting to see whether are they either price matching or are they actually being competitive in the long run. Obviously we won't go through the boredom of me searching through and trying to figure that out on this occasion, but that's one of the first things I would do. Very nice drop there in the graph initially. Fuck off, keeper. Always get that button wrong on the first go. So we can zoom in and look at a bit closer. I mean, that's a really steep PSR drop there, suggesting some sales happened there for whatever reason. Now that might not be the case. It could have been seller count drops. That's gone very high to very low immediately. So that in itself is a bit of a red flag for me. It's down as DG. Often that isn't the case though. It's usually flagged when there's a battery of some sort. So obviously this will be a rechargeable battery. So it can go through a DG or hazmat review. But quite often I've found that they aren't actually, I've sold loads of toothbrushes from Boots and Superdrug clearances and things that say DG and they aren't. So I wouldn't let that deter me in this case. I think the private label one's a bit of a pointless exercise. It's simply highlighting that it's historically had a low seller count, which does indicate it. What you've got to bear in mind then on this alerts panel on SaaS, it's always it's not a guarantee. It's not telling you this is an issue, this is a private label in this example. It's saying it's an alert, it's letting you know. So there you go, when I hover over it, this product has few historic sellers, which is a sign it could be PL. So it's just giving you the heads up that it's something you might want to look at. So it's more of a warning than a red flag. So I wouldn't let that put me off too much, given Procter & Gamble, Oral-B, we know they're fine. Looking at over the last year, you can see that same consistent up and down spike in that sell price from Amazon. The buy box does rise up. When Amazon peak it back up, the buy box does go back up, probably in line with the FBA sellers. So looking at the lower end of this scale, we're probably looking around 230, but it does jump up nice and high to 320. But even if we change this now to 230, see, despite the difference in value there, it's still coming in quite low. So you're going to be looking at trying to aim for this higher buy box price, 320 there, let's say. Now this will look good. 50%, £80 profit. For me, I would say that this is highly dependent on your capital and your sort of tolerance for risk. You're going to be spending £160 on it. Granted, yes, you'll make 80, which is fantastic. But you're reliant on the history of it. So, at some point in the past there, we can see for a couple of months, it didn't come back up. That peak back to that high point from Amazon just didn't happen. It does seem to be a consistent pattern over the past year. So I'd say it's a relatively safe bet. The risk here is whether you'll get it back up to 320. So, automatically, if we have a look at the current sellers, there's only one up at 320. There's three here. What's that? 11, 14 stock, only at 280. So when we punch that back in at 280, it's all right, isn't it? 33%, still 50 odd pound profit, and that's me VAT registered. So it'll be better for the non-VAT people. To be fair, if you can add that to your inventory without issue, what I tend to do, as I say, is I'll open the product page, just double check this, 100 plus bought in the past month, so that's good to see, definitely selling. Obviously we are trusting Amazon are telling the truth with that, but when we compare it back to SaaS, we've got the same indicators on here, and I would also consider popping it in Keeper, but with this one, I don't think the data is going to be as good because I think it's going to be heavily reliant on Amazon and its sales. So there will be a lot of sales happening that are Amazons that, because they don't reveal their stock counts, if you like, it will say 999. That just means they're not telling you. So it's assumed they've got, umpteen in the back room and they can sell at what they want. I mean, it reckons they've sold 1,500 in the past 30 days. So that's absolutely nuts. But these big stock drops, 1,003, 1,003. And that's what I was just saying to you there. So they will just say they've got 999 stock. It's just the way Keeper reads how Amazon presents it. They don't give that figure. So it's just 1,000 by default. When Amazon come off the listing and things, it will just drop right down to those low figures. 1,003. 1,003. So that's all that is. So I reckon 1,000 of those sales is bollocks. That's probably going to be 500 at best, which even then it doesn't stack up with here. We've got 100 sold, and on the Amazon page we had 100 sold, if I remember rightly. So yeah, I reckon you're probably realistically looking around the 100 sales per month mark. The buy box is shared, as you can see there. When Amazon go back up to 430, the buy box goes back down to the FBA people, because the gap in price difference between Amazon and the other sellers is big enough that they don't keep hold of the buy box. And we can see in the graph. In the graph background there, we can see a nice share as well. They do hold it a lot, but nowhere near even 50%, so it's sound.
Yeah, hello.
Hello, mate. You want to ask one?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask. So basically, I put a Oral-B electric toothbrush on the chat.
Mm-hmm.
I got the lead from, I think, yourself on the Amazon A2A leads.
Okay.
And basically, I think Amazon had 3 in stock. So I purchased the last 3.
Mm-hmm.
It was going for £160. And then I tried to reorder and it says fully out of stock. So I'm pretty sure they're fully out of stock. And then
Was that the exact wording?
Yeah,
What,
so it says out.
What happens with Amazon usually is most accounts, or 99.9% of accounts, buying accounts, are limited in how many they can buy. So once you buy 3, it'll say you can't buy any more. That doesn't necessarily mean they're out of stock. It just means that you're limited. So that's why people have multiple buying accounts. So you can have 3 personal accounts before you're sort of pushing your luck, and a business account. And if you're very lucky, it's very rare, but on occasion, some people tends to be bigger sellers. There must be something in that, but they can get unlimited quantity buying accounts where they could order, if Amazon's got 1,000 of it, they can order the 1,000. And they're the people who make some really big money. Obviously, you've got to have massive capital, but...
Yeah. I was going to ask, even if you click live and it says they only have 3 in stock, and then I tried to place another order from a different account and it still didn't go through.
Okay, well, that's a good sign then, isn't it? That is more... I mean, is that... Which ASIN is that in the chat?
It's just...
And I'll have a quick look.
I just put it on the chat right now.
Yeah, stick it on its own. I'll open it up and I'll see if I can buy it, and that'll tell us if it's gone or not.
Okay, cool. So basically, my plan was that I'm gonna FBM them for 270. I think after fees it ends up as 250. So profit-wise, after all fees, is about, if I get it for 160, then if I put it for FBM, I get about 60 £60 profit each. And if they don't sell, I'll just return it back to Amazon within 30 days.
What are you thinking of FBM in it?
Yeah, I've just sent it to you on the chat.
Yeah, I've got that one there. So can you see that one on my screen now? Is that's the right one, is it? This black one?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So easiest thing to do. See how I'm limited to 3 there. Add to basket.
I think it adds to basket, but then when you click pay,
won't let you go through.
Yeah.
Add it to basket. Let's have a look. I'm not logged in right now, so it might not give it me. But yeah, to change the quantity to 1. So that would suggest, yeah, you could be right. It could have gone. But yeah, that's a pretty safe bet. The only thing I would say with that approach is if you do that on the regular and you're sort of regularly I can't even say it, regularly returning products, you might flag on the system. They might close your buying account. So you don't want to sort of take the mick with that approach too much. I think on occasion with ones like this where you've got an opportunity for a really big payout, then it's worthwhile. But I wouldn't take that approach with every A2A that I buy, because you might.
I've done the same with the Remington hairdryer and the hair straightener as well. So
Yeah.
I think I was the only one that bought the last few, and there's none in stock now.
Very good. It's always nice when it goes out of stock quick. That usually means you see very little change in the price. When an A2A stays in stock for a few days, and we see plenty of success posts, that's when you start to think, oh, great, it's going to get competitive.
But my plan with the Remington is actually to send it in, because the profit margin's not too high. So I'm thinking I might send it in.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends as well on what you're comfortable with doing. I haven't got the time for FBM in terms of dealing with shipping and things myself, so I don't entertain it. But if you've got the time to do it, then on the higher ticket items, it tends to work out better to FBM it, doesn't it? As well can do with the oversize sometimes. So it's definitely a good option for the right listings, and I think, as I say, it tends to be the higher margin stuff, the bigger profits, where it tends to work in your favour. Otherwise, ultimately, no one would FBM, would they? At the end of the day, we'd all just be FBA sellers. There are FBM sellers for a reason.
Is there any chance you can look at the Remington and see if it was like it's worth a to send as a FBA?
The one we mentioned right at the very start, the Prolux Midnight Hairdryer.
Yeah,
from last night.
There was. Yeah, basically.
Let me have a quick
So I think
look.
Amazon was selling one left, and I think I purchased the last one, and then after they're out of stock, because I've tried to order again, I think everyone else's price is about, I think, £60. So profit margin if you FBA it is about a small £20, but I just want to know if it's a decent buy.
I mean, looking at this graph history, obviously it's gone through little spells where they've probably price matched another store, but you can see the BSR improves as well there. Now that could just be the FBA sellers who've or the A2A people who've been on and bought loads of them, so it improves the BSR very quickly. But generally, the history of it looks to be around 60 quid. If we look at the buy box price, it's getting dragged down slightly because of these drops, but generally speaking, I think you're looking at a £60 sell price easily. It's then whether you can creep it up a bit more and catch one of these later on as sellers sell out. Amazon there going up as high as 84 quite often, so yeah, there's plenty of opportunity for it. It's 300 sales per month.
Yeah. And I think Amazon, I bought the last bit from what they have in stock, so then that's them out of the question, I think.
Well, let's test this theory again then.
Okay.
I'll go on to mine that is logged in for once. Let's see if we can see if it makes a difference. It's that one, isn't it? I think. So standard Amazon accounts are limited, so it's only one purchase limit for some reason. And it says I can have it tomorrow. So I don't
Does it actually place the order?
Well, I've only got buy now left to click, and it's telling me I can have it tomorrow. So that would suggest that it's...
Yeah, I think I did the same, and then when I click buy now, then it goes to a page where it says, sorry, this item is out of stock.
No, that's fair enough then. As long as you get that trigger that it specifically says it's out of stock and not just that you're on a quantity limit and things like that, then it's going to be pretty reliable. What you tend to find is that when they do these drops in price and the A2A people jump on it, they'll go in and out of stock a few times quite often. So you think they've sold out, and then the next day you have a look and there's more. That doesn't necessarily mean you can buy more. You might still have hit your quantity limit, but it can just mean that orders didn't go through, so people have put it in the basket, gone off and done something else, come back to check it later and decided against it, and it comes back into available stock rather than in that state of being in somebody's basket and it's not currently available, if you like. So that's always one to watch out for. But no, I, to be fair, I quite like the history on this one. If we have a look over a longer period of time, it's not historically being that high. You can see late 40s. I think we saw a couple of 30s there. Yeah, last time Amazon dropped it, 39.99. So it's dropped better now than it did that last time. No, I think that's a pretty safe bet, to be fair. I don't mind that one. Yeah, I think with the higher sales per month there at 300, that's something that I think is worth going for. When you see A2As and you're looking at 50 sales a month, 100 sales a month, what you don't want to be blinded by is those high profits, high ROIs. So when that starts saying 10, 20, 30 pound profit and you think, wow, that's fantastic, don't let that blind you to the rest of the data. Yes, it can be sometimes worth the risk because the reward is higher, but don't let that blind you to all of your usual checks. And it's a very fine balance between good lead analysis and outright gambling. I've seen it many a time where people will just buy it because it's got the potential for that return and don't really assess the history and are relying on just catching the buy box, luckily, at that high price. And yes, it works out sometimes, but it also can leave you stuck and you can end up making losses on things. So just don't be blinded by those big numbers. Make sure you still do your due diligence on your lead analysis. Stick to your guns. Do what you would normally do. And if you think there's some risk in it, is the reward worth the risk? What happens if it doesn't work out? Is it a problem for you? If you're starting off in this game and you've obviously got limitations on your capital, you don't want to necessarily be tying big amounts of money up in these higher ticket items. Not necessarily this one, this isn't particularly high ticket, but the one we looked at before, some of the toothbrushes, whilst the profits look amazing at 50, 60, 80 quid, it's costing you 160. So if you're getting 2 or 3 of them, you're up at nearly 500 quid. If you're only starting with a grand or two, that's not practical and isn't best use of your money, or it's certainly a higher risk approach to it. So I wouldn't generally encourage that kind of method for a new starter. But if your capital's fine and you're happy to take the risk, you're happy to sit on it and hold if necessary, then it's definitely good opportunities out there. Right, we've been on for an hour now. I'll have a quick flick back through. I don't think I've missed too much going on. Let me have a quick flick back through. A1, I don't think we've touched on yours, mate, have we? Let me try some of these for you. So we're looking at this ASIN from the chat there, $6.99. So it's the As the Lead from today, from Timmy. Had some nice finds today, didn't he? Let's have a look. So straight away, obviously, it SAS automates for me. I don't know whether it's a setting or not. But so 3 months of the graph. So it's not been around very long. So, well, not on Amazon anyway. So it looks like at the start of the year it came on. That should mean that this price is going to hold for quite a period of time still, because they don't tend to drop and fluctuate much or too much at the start, unless they look particularly inflated to start off with, which looking at this set, it doesn't. It's likely to gain some traction as time goes on. Not a lot of data to go off. That seller count jumped quickly, so somewhere must have been dropping these at some point for it to be up here. But with it being a newer Lego set as well, what we'll probably find now is when I load these up, yeah, you've got a lot of FBM people who are selling it for a lot more. So what can happen sometimes with Lego is when it's a new set out, there's the potential for it going out of stock at places like Lego itself, albeit it'd be pretty rare. If it's a popular set or for a popular, this is Disney set. So if the movie Encanto was coming out now or has just been out, so it's really sort of peak popularity, then these sales per month would be through the roof, and it'd be going out of stock. It'd be going out of stock on Lego, unless they'd prepared for that and obviously made enough to begin with. So these FBM sellers are pushing the luck, in my opinion. It's never really likely to get up that high. It's not that kind of set. It's only small. So I would just look at it based on how it is at the moment. I think the $17.99 price range is right. I like it. If I found these in Asda, I'd be cleaning them out. Lego is always a great seller, in my opinion. Always recovers. Absolute worst case, you wait on it for a year, it retires, and the price goes back up anyway. So it can be long term. Depends on accessibility. Doesn't seem to be too many Asdas. Friend of mine in Ace went and checked out my local Asda, beat me to it before earlier this evening, said there was absolutely nothing. Now, that doesn't mean somebody didn't beat him already, but it's a lot of people saying, particularly down south, that they had no luck going into Asda's, didn't find any of them. So whether it was just a discount up north, who knows? Doesn't sound likely, but Asda's a strange one for inconsistency. It's very difficult to know which stores are taking part in whatever clearance or liquidation or whatever that they're going through. There seems to be a difference in stores. You have Asda Living, which is apparently a different kind of store. There's no way of knowing which one it is. I assumed it was because it may have the home section and you can go and buy your couch cushions and your curtains and all that kind of stuff, homeware type stuff. But I was in one not long ago, and I asked the staff member, I said, do you know the difference? And they said they'd never heard of it. They didn't understand. But there has been consistency where certain types of stores get certain types of discounts nationally and others don't. It's just very difficult. Even the staff don't know whether they're one of those store types or not. So, I think it's been a good find today, that one. I haven't found any, and I can hit a few. I know a few people locally to me who've been around the area, and they've not got any either, so it's a good sign. I think that's a really safe bet. If you've managed to catch any of them today, you're in safe hands, I think. That's a good one. Let's have a look at his other one, because I know he's been waiting patiently. $16.99 on the cost of goods. So this one is probably not going to work out for me because it's getting tight on the margins, with me being VAT registered and a prep fee. Pricing history's not great either. Buy box sticking around £25, £26. So at $16.99, I'd be a little bit nervous on that one personally. It's going to be tricky to get the sale price that you're looking for. Now, what I'd probably do is I'd probably bung it in keeper, just cross compare, see if we can get those the FBA sales data. Fucking keeper's garbage at night. Does anybody else find that? It just doesn't want to work of an evening. There must be so many people using it at once. Quick refresh and we're in. FBA, take off use, look at historical. 137. Crayola store, red flag. We'll look at that in a minute, but looking at that quantity, it's looking like brand on the listing. No sharp drops in the stock counts for those who have sold something. So initially that was looking good. But there you go, Crayola store. Where are you down here? I've never noticed Crayola on Amazon before, but if this is their official seller account, then I'd be getting nervous and automatically considering walking away. It's not worth the IP, especially, yeah. So that's looking like brand on listing. Don't like it. Not one bit. We'd look at the history. Depends how long they've been on the listing, but I would imagine, yeah, there you go. So in the last 6 months, they're on it and they hogged the buy box, which is not surprising. But saying that, there's no signs of IPs getting issued, so maybe they're not asked, which is great. Again, comes back to perhaps your risk tolerance and what you're prepared to do. If you've got good account health, you can afford an IP claim or two without it causing you any significant problems, then you might want to risk it. Now, obviously on this listing, I would say, no, I wouldn't risk this at all. That history of the buy box price there, going back slightly before then, it's still only looking, it's not great, still sub 30. So even at 30, it's still down to 12%. Now obviously, let's change that to non-VAT. Not registered, it's 13%. Yeah, that one doesn't work for me. Brand on the listing coupled with price history, it's inflated right now. Be interesting, where are they on it? There you go. So it's inflated right now because Crayola aren't on it. They've come off for whatever reason, out of stock or whatever. And because of that, it's allowed the price to creep up there. So if we zoom that back in, when it's that nice steady line, that'll be when they held the buy box. When they've gone out of stock, it's now creeping back up. So you may be able to get it in quick and make a quick sale, but at 50 sales a month, I wouldn't be buying many units, and I'd say it's a pretty risky move, because odds are they're going to come back in stock and put the price back down here, and then you're stuck, aren't you? Slow seller, 50 sales per month. You don't want to be sat on that for too long. You're just going to tie up money. It's not the cheapest product to buy. So if you start buying 5 to 10 of them, 100 to 150, 170 quid if you had 10 of them, you know, you're tying a lot of money up. And for me, too risky. All right, let's jump back in at the chat. Loopy Lou, the Squishmallows lights, it says Fizz Creations by Fizz Creations, but on the range it doesn't mention that. When you go on Amazon, it says visit Fizz Creations store, and it goes to that seller. Yes, I want it. Is that a red flag? Hold on, let's have a look. Fizz Creations, Fizz Creations. Let's have a look. Sometimes it can be the red flag when the brand name doesn't match what the product is. Now, I'm not familiar with Squishmallows, but do Fizz Creations make Squishmallows? I don't know. Let's have a look. Squishmallows. Parent company. Can we find that out at all? Jazzwares. Yeah, so what you can often see on Amazon with the listings is sellers who set them up, put something in there to try and almost make it so that it looks like it's theirs when it's not. I have seen cases of false IP claims where other sellers have basically tried to get everybody kicked off the listing, and Amazon don't seem to be interested in rhyme or reason and logic. If we go and have a look at that seller's store, yes, I want it, we're probably going to see a nice mishmash of all sorts going on. And what we'll probably find is their name is probably in quite a few listings. And I'm guessing that probably just means that they've set it up. Yeah, tricky one. No obvious issues though for me. No red flags, no IP drops. On the graphs, the sales are consistent. The price has been coming down a little bit, but I think that'll recover. Are they on that listing at the moment? Yeah, there they are. So they're probably on a repricer, matching anybody who comes on. They've probably got good stock. They may actually be an authorised seller. There's no real way of knowing this, but with no warning signs in the graphs, I'm not worried about it. No, might be worried if I'd bought 100 from wholesale. I'd be going and making sure I could get that letter of authority for selling it, but for the sake of a few units, we should be on and off the listing in no time. Yeah, no problem. No, but it's certainly a good catch. It's something to look out for. But yeah, when you do spot those kind of issues, look on Google, look for parent companies, look to see who owns whatever the listing is. So in this case, it was Squishmallows. Go and find out who owns that. Is that the same company name? And as I say, it could just literally be the seller who set up the listing, who just stuck a brand reference that is tied to them. It's probably a trademark issue in reality if they aren't licensed in any way that they're suggesting that it's theirs somehow, or they are somehow linked to it when they're not. But again, risk tolerance. Some people just push their luck and bend the rules to work in their favour. But good sign. History of sellers looks okay. We're going back beginning of Jan, so turn of the year. Well, we're not talking loads of sellers, but it's up to 10, dropping back down again. No drops. I'd say it's okay at the minute. You might find if this suddenly peaks up to 50 sellers because of the source and its availability, then you might find an IP gets slapped around because that seller might get fed up with the competition and decide, right, let's get them off. I don't think it happens very often, but as far as I understand it, it is perfectly possible. So a quick look at the chat here before we call it a night. You cleared the shelf as soon as Timmy pinged it. Yeah, I would have as well, to be fair. I always do with Lego. It's almost a certainty to be good. It's just a matter of, is it immediately good, or have you got to wait for a little bit depending on availability. Right, I think we're okay. Tell you what, let's have a quick look at this one before we finish. You bought on the 31st of October last year, £9.1. I have sold an absolute boatload of these in the last 8-9 months. Yeah, it's been low for a while. This numpty keeps lowballing it. I hope that's not you. If it is, up it. Yeah, Notino regularly have this discounted. As you can see there, it's been in my history a few times. Yeah, well, you would say it wasn't you, wouldn't you? You're not going to publicly out yourself. But no, yeah, it's. I have noticed this on this listing before. This guy just keeps dropping down. Doesn't get the buy box, which is interesting, because he's only competing with other sellers in a similar situation in terms of review counts. But yeah, he's not getting it for whatever reason. It's always on discount, Wolfie, isn't it? it's catching it when it's on its best discount. I've got quite a few still in stock. I'm just riding it out. I think Notino will run out eventually. They did go out of stock for a while, but it came back, which was a bit frustrating. I had a backlog of stock to send in. It was just before I started using the prep center, and I must have had about 60 of these. And I needed them out of the way, and I sent them all in, and then it dropped like £1 more on Notino than I'd been paying for it. I was like, God damn it. And then I saw the VAs started pinging it, my VAs all started finding it, and I was like, God damn, every man and his dog's going to be on this one. And looks like that's what happened. It didn't go too high though, to be fair, 39 there. But there you go, look at that peak. I'm in there somewhere, just shy of 80. Lovely. What everyone wants to see, isn't it? But yeah, it's coming back now. I think it's only a matter of time. We're back down to 16 sellers when it peaked there at nearly 80. Price should start rising. It probably already is rising, to be fair. Let's have a look. Yeah, I was going to say, I remember it sticking at $14.99. I only checked this a few days ago because I made a sale at about 17, 18 quid, something like that. I don't know whether I've sold out now. Maybe I only had a few left. Unless I'm higher. I might be underestimating it. I wonder where I am. I'm in there somewhere, I think. But yeah, it's starting to rise back up now. So you can see there, 26 sellers. It's at 15 quid. As that seller count now starts to drop, 15, late 15s, 16, mid 16. It's getting towards late 16, 17 and a half. And there we are now, 17 and a half. So it's getting there. I'd hold. Stay strong. You've held now since October. What's a little bit longer? It's about to recover. But I bet if we check now, £9.1. Let's see what it's coming up as. £10.60. What does that equate to if we can get it bulked up? £10.60. So £9.1. I thought that's what you were saying. You bought it for back in October, but it's £9.1 now as well. I wouldn't be buying it right now. What I would be doing is, I'll give you this last tidbit before we call it a night. I'd be taking the ASIN. I'd be heading over to Keeper, and I'd be using this option track. There you go. I'm already tracking it. That's interesting, isn't it? So what you can do is you can set a tracker to alert you when the buy box price reaches a certain level. So if it's been bricked for ages and you're waiting for it to come back, you're fed up of looking, you can just set a tracker on it. That's usually the best way to not spend all day every day checking on all the old listings, everything that's tanked, to see what's happening. So it's at 17.46 now. Let's say you were waiting for it to be back at 18.99. You could say update. Well, I'm updating. You could add existing tracking. Say what? We'll take it off. We'll reload it. Let's add one in for you. Show you it quickly in case anybody's not familiar with it. Track product. So here you can see what your options are. We're not interested in Amazon, so let's zero them out. We are interested in this buy box price. Let's say you wanted it to be $18.99. If you were wanting to sell at $18.99, I might consider doing $17.99 because we're getting quite close to that now. So it's a good example. When the buy box hits that price, Keeper will pick it up and you'll get both an email and you'll get an app alert that tells you this product has now hit your target price. So you now know, right, it's now time for you to sell it, send it in, not sell it, time to send it in. If you've been sat on it at home, letting it recover, it's just an automated system for alerting you when it's time to send in. Obviously, you'll go back to the listing once you get that alert, double check that that's the case, but more often than not, it means, right, it's time to send in. Saves you paying storage fees. You know, if you bought it back in October and you sent it in, you're paying storage fees on it now. What are we, 6 months later, 5 months later? So yeah, you'll have some storage fees kicking in there. So that's eating into your profit. And when your profit's already not going to be fantastic, I mean, I would imagine, again, £18.50-ish before I start getting close to 20% ROI. This one is not great because you've held it for 4 or 5 months. Let's say you did the Latino typical limit of 10, you just did one order, so you spent 90 quid and you're only getting less than 18 quid back if you were VAT registered. Not VAT reg, so for 90 quid you made 20 quid. So it's yes everything's green, but was it worth holding and tying up 90 quid for that long? Probably not. So but it depends on your capital again. So a newer seller, that would be a really frustrating one to have to deal with, because it is a good lead, it does sell really well, 400 times a month. I think that is true as well. I think that's a pretty accurate figure, because before, in the past, when it has been a good price, it still sold really well. So I was on this before it got pinged. It must have been quite new at Natino when my VAs caught it. But yeah, it's okay. It will recover. It's about to. So yeah, you're in pretty safe bets. Does setting that tracker mean they email you when it hits the price? Yep, that's exactly right. So as soon as the buy box hits $17.99, Keeple will send you an email and an app alert, so you know to then check it and send it in. It's a great feature when you're holding stock rather than sending it in. If you're trying to avoid shipping fees, storage fees rather, with things like an A2A that's been, high stock, good quantities available, everybody's posting success, there's going to be a real big influx of sellers. Doesn't mean don't buy it. It means hold it. Wait for the recoveries. Wait for the listing to stabilize. Let the competition and the silly buggers leave who are obsessed with the speed of sale instead of maximum profit. Set one of these price trackers. Put it in your shed, in your loft, wherever, and then just wait for the day that this alerts you. You can check these things periodically, every now and again. As I say, you can. I don't tend to use this too often because I don't like the longer holds, but you can come back in and look at things, and double check on them periodically yourself. If you've not heard, if you've not had an alert for a while, then you can come and check on them. But it's a good feature, that one, for the long holds. Well, hopefully that turned into a good session for you. I think it went pretty well. Hopefully you found it useful. If you want me to do more sessions like this, let me know. We can do this kind of thing more regularly if that's the kind of thing you like. If we're going to do it regularly, you can get some ASINs for me and we can do live reviews. Try not to pick ones that are in your subgroups in the server so we don't leak any leads to the other subgroups. But hope you had a good night. And I think it's the group chat next week, me, Paul and Jay, Wednesday night. So get your questions and suggestions for anything you'd like us to do. All right, have a good night, and I'll see you all next week.